I think we're started. Welcome in. This is an episode of Betting the Pitch with your host, real_G Warner, on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon. This is a Major League Baseball episode. I don't know what's going on with my speaker sound or whatever, but I guess we're just rolling with it. Hope everyone is doing well. We're going to go through the Major League Baseball card for Monday. There is one early game, I think, in Kansas City. Which probably is not going to be so interesting to most, as it's two teams that likely are not going to make the playoffs. But we'll go through, get an ultimate best bet or just a best bet, I guess. Ultimate best bet comes in the soccer pods, which thank you for the support watching those. Might as well get started. So want to mention my Patreon account, patreon.com/the_G Warner. You get direct access to me. My leans across all sports are posted each night, really right before I go to bed is my plan, or worst case scenario, that next morning. But we'll put that out. We'll update things throughout the day. Of course, you can interact with me directly. If you want or have some thoughts on a game you're looking at yourself and you want my opinions, I'm certainly happy to put that out. I think if you subscribe on any other platform, you should check it out because the price should be very, very good for you. So check that out, patreon.com/the_G Warner. I probably should put a link to that in my description. I don't know why I haven't done that yet, but I will. And then other than that, we're going to go through the baseball card and try to find some winners on today's list. So all lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced juices offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account. Use promo code GW50. You got to use that one to get the bonus. GW, my initials, 50, to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. Okay, we got it. We're here. Let's find some baseball winners. So I'll start rotation order. So we'll get to the day game in Kansas City later, but we'll get there. We'll start with the Mets at the Marlins. Currently, Buto is starting, I think, Jose for the Mets, and he's visiting a pretty hot Miami team that swept the Braves this weekend. Edward Cabrera, who had been a bulk reliever recently, but is scheduled to start this one. Probably isn't going too deep in this game. Might get 6 innings out of him. Probably is a maximum, most likely 5. But the Marlins are a -147 favorite at Bet Online. Over under is 8.5, juiced to the over. Looks like some money has been coming in on the over so far. A little bit of money on the Mets, it seems. Not a ton, not a huge move. But Cabrera's been really good. He has an issue with walks, though. That's a big concern. And I feel like the Mets are still a team that are going to play spoiler. They were supposed to be really good this year, spent a ton of money in their team, unloaded a lot of those players, but ultimately they still have a lot of talent. Pete Alonso is still really scary every time he's up to the plate. Nearly rescued a bet of mine on Friday night with a 3-run shot. And really, the Mets certainly have plenty of problems, but the bullpen's not too bad. Ottavino's been pretty good closing. I still really like Drew Smith's arm. And then they also have, I think it's Rayleigh, who they got from the Rays in the offseason, lefty, who's been really good. So feels like a pretty big price for Miami, but coming off a home sweep and still at home today, but a home sweep over the Atlanta Braves, best team in baseball, seems like they probably are getting a little bit more respect than maybe deserve, but I don't know that I can trust Buto. That certainly is my lean, is to the Mets on the road there. Just Carrera's been good, but he's not going to last a ton of the game. The Marlins going to have to use a lot of their bullpen, which has been good this year, and it really is why they're in the playoff race. But it's certainly something to consider, but I think I might need a bigger price even, which I don't think we'll get. Next, we'll move to Philadelphia visiting Atlanta. We got Zach Wheeler on the road at Kyle Wright. Braves coming off that road sweep at Miami and certainly are reeling a little bit. Questions about whether Ronald Acuna is going to play in this one. Certainly that lineup is very capable without him, but he is definitely the tip of the spear, leading off, and of course, being the best player in baseball that he is, essentially. I think he should win an MVP. We'll see. Wheeler has moved from an underdog overnight to a favorite, and he's been really good over the last couple seasons. I mean, just great arm, big prospect, of course. San Francisco, I think the Mets traded for way back when, a Carlos Beltran deal. He's delivered, I guess, went to a different team in the East. And so the Braves know him plenty well, but he still had some pretty good success, has good swing and miss, good fastball. And that's really what you want in today's Major League Baseball. Big questions about Kyle Wright, who's come off Vandy Boy, by the way, my NBA alma mater, but he's come off an IL long stint. I think he pitched in April and then didn't really come back until September due to shoulder issues, and has not looked good so far. this is a really tough spot for him in Atlanta, where I think the temps have probably cooled quite a bit from the summer, pretty much like wet air essentially with humidity. But I think Wright is someone you can't really trust right now. It makes sense to me that Philly has moved to a favorite, which is a little bit surprising based on Atlanta closing a favorite. I think every game of the series at the Dodgers, if maybe one of them they did not, but still that said a lot. Now at home to Philly, they're closing an underdog. I think that's a big statement on the market's expectations, or at least what we've seen from Kyle Wright so far. Based on this number now, I'm a little bit interested in Atlanta since it's crossed 0 and they're now getting odds at home and they're still the best team in baseball. But with questions about Acuna not being in the lineup potentially, and definitely big questions about Kyle Wright being competitive against a team that hits the ball out of the ballpark, that is a really scary recipe. So it's probably one of those where I wait to see if Philly moves back to an underdog. That would say something, certainly, if a marketplace is backing a Acuna-less lineup with a starter that hasn't really shown anything of note yet this season, or really just shown really bad things since he returned from injury. That would tell me that Atlanta money is really coming in, and then would make me scratch my head a little bit. Over under here is 9.5. It's actually taken some under money, which doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Maybe that is some backing of Kyle Wright, but ultimately the side has flipped from Wright being a favorite to Wright being an underdog. So maybe that's a lot of Philadelphia money as well. Milwaukee then visits St. Louis. Got Freddie Peralta at Adam Wainwright. Waino making one of his last starts of his career. It's been a great one. I guess he's going to be singing some sort of like 3-song, whatever you'd call that, at the end of his season in St. Louis. I don't think it's today, but you never know. Got to save those vocal cords or something. Peralta has been great. Had a kind of slow-ish start to the year, but I think the underlying metrics always showed that he was going to come back and start pitching really well again. Still missing bats, always has, and is pretty important to do that against the St. Louis lineup that's built to hit the ball out of the ballpark. They haven't done it with much consistency this year, and that's why they're not in the race or in the playoffs or hunt or anything like that. But St. Louis are still pretty scary at home. Should have some decent crowd support because St. Louis does care about sports there, besides the Rams, unfortunately. But from where I don't really know what to make of Adam Wainwright. Yes, there's some emotion and potentially some big motivation because he's not going to pitch after 2 weeks from now, but his stuff is not good. It hasn't been good for a while, but he was surviving on ground balls from curveballs and things of that nature with a pretty middling fastball, probably not even middling anymore. Milwaukee's got questions about their lineup, that those are always around. Their bullpen's good. Peralta's great. Does that make the current -175 favorite of Milwaukee a value? I don't think so. I think that's very expensive for a Milwaukee team that doesn't hit very well. But I don't know that +160 the other way right now on Waino is enough for me to get involved. 8.5 is the total, which come down from 9. That maybe gives Waino some respect. I feel like I like over, if anything, there, but can't say I have a ton of really strong leans. Next, we'll go to Colorado at San Diego. And of course, we don't have a starting pitcher for the Rockies. I mean, welcome to September baseball. I got to say, it's been a really great month, second half of the season. So I'm not complaining and hoping that this all keeps going. I'm having a good time. I know my patron subscribers and everyone at pregame are having a good time because we're doing really well, but trying to keep that going, while who knows, judging motivation is going to really come in and be a question. Ultimately, I want guys that are fighting for the playoffs, or teams that are fighting for the playoffs, and I want young players that are trying to keep their jobs or get new jobs or get jobs. Those are the ones that are most interesting to me. Big contracts that are probably just playing out the string. Manny Machado sitting on Sunday seems like one of those type of scenarios. And certainly you can question his interest. And I mean, at home, big crowd should be expected. San Diego, I guess maybe not even a big crowd would be expected. I mean, San Diego has had great crowd support for a couple of seasons. I went to a whole series there against the Dodgers, which is probably like the biggest series of the year. So that makes sense why they was so crowded. But they've been there for their team despite not a lot of other stuff or things going well this season. I guess San Diego doesn't have another sports team, so it makes sense they would care so much about that. But the Rockies are in town. San Diego doesn't have much to play for. The Rockies are just one of the worst teams in the world. Analytics-wise, department probably doesn't exist. Maybe the Broncos are worse than they are, but still not a great time for Denver sports professionally after the Nuggets, I guess. So maybe that makes up for it. But back to this game, Michael Wacha at home it looks like Ty Block should be starting for Colorado. Who knows if that's a bulk scenario, but he's okay. He can get outs, but it's going to be tough with not a lot of strikeout stuff against San Diego team that hits the ball out of the ballpark. Looks like we have a 220 right now in Colorado, plus 220, gigantic, but I'm not backing it. Over under is 8, which seems a little bit low for these two pitchers, but Michael Wacha's had a really good year. Kind of surprised he didn't get moved at the deadline, but the Padres decided not to move anybody, which is another really bad decision by that franchise. Moving now to the American League, and this is the early start. Cleveland and Cal Quantrill visiting Brady Singer. I think Quantrill has been really solid ever since he came back from the injured list. We know that's a ticking time bomb because he does not strike out anybody. But he is facing the Royals, who don't strike out. So that's not a huge difference there. So it's probably expected that Quantrill is going to keep the ball in play. Really big yard in Kansas City. I think a day game probably helps with the ball carrying, but it's hard to hit home runs there. Kansas City lineup is not built for that. It's going to be, let's see how many death by a million or 1,000 paper cuts is probably how this is going to go, where Quantrill's going to try to get the ball hit at people, getting good counts, and then try to get some weak contact because he's getting contact. He's not getting that swing and miss. But on the other side, Brady Singer's had a really up and down year. I think mainly down. He was getting hit harder than any other pitcher in Major League Baseball for, I think, the first 2 months of the season. That hasn't really improved, or it looked like it did improve, and then it came back to being a problem again. So Quantrill opened a favorite, still a favorite, minus 119 right now. Bet online. Over under is 9.5, juiced heavily the over, which is a little bit surprising. The original total was 9. So we've had some over money come in. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me because Cleveland's lineup is not very strong. I mean, Jose Ramirez hit a ball a mile yesterday against the Rangers, but ultimately the Rangers were throwing a bullpen game. And things spiraled in one inning that seemed to take 40 minutes. So two pitchers came in, at least, well, one started the inning, one came in relief. Jonathan Hernandez, who's about as wild as anything out there, about as wild as Wild Turkey. I wish they were a sponsor, so I probably shouldn't say that. But anyway, I don't know. I did pick up Kyle Quantrill for fantasy purposes because he has 2 starts this week, and they're I think he could get a pretty good outing out of this one, maybe get a quality start. That's important to some of you. I don't know necessarily that will do enough. And there's certainly some risk there. Probably over makes the most sense, though. It's 2 really bad lineups for hitting the ball out of the ballpark, and in a ballpark that doesn't really give up home runs. So we're going to have to see a lot of hits being strung back to back to back. And that's really not in vogue, or really what happens in Major League Baseball in the year of our Lord 2023. Next, we'll go to Boston at Texas. We got Cutter Crawford, one of the best pitcher names in baseball, besides James Outman, if he was a pitcher, I guess. Cutter Crawford on the road at Jordan Montgomery for the Texas Rangers. Rangers are hanging on for dear life to that AL West hope. After really leading the whole time, but kind of like Arsenal in English Premier League last year, you kind of felt it slipping out of their grasp. Maybe not it's possible that the Rangers can get back on top. Houston and Seattle have not been playing very well lately, but Texas has big problems. They used a ton of bullpen yesterday. Good thing they have Jordan Montgomery going, because he's been really lights out ever since the Yankees dealt him away. Maybe just got out of the Bronx and things get better. I mean, just ask Sonny Gray about that. But Montgomery currently a minus 158 favorite at home. Over under is 8.5, juiced a little bit to the over, which has flipped a little bit since opening, a little more juice in the under when it initially came out. Side hasn't moved much, but Boston was in a really competitive series in Toronto this weekend. They are not in the playoff race, but are in a really good division. Everyone, I think, will probably finish over 500. It seems there will definitely be some what do you call it? Friendly fire. I guess they're not friendly because they're all in the American League East, but there will be some, because there's a lot of divisional matchups to close out the seasons. There will be some attrition there. Maybe one team will finish under 500. The Red Sox could be that one, or it probably will be the Yankees, one of those two. But regardless, Boston's fighting Kenley Jansen. I'm not sure about when he's going to get activated from the COVID IL. Sad that disease is still around, but I guess it's going to be around forever. I feel like Montgomery, he's been so good, but behind him in that Texas bullpen, there's only lefties essentially that are trustworthy. They're really scary to me, which makes any big price like this make me want to look at the dog like very, very closely. Crawford at plus 145 has been very competitive this year. I think he's got more strikeouts than innings pitched this year, which is a big indicator that you can miss bats, especially as a starter. I feel like he can hang in this game. The Texas lineup has, of course, can be really good on certain days, but it also has not lived up to the expectations set by its awesome start to the season. The pressure is on Texas. None is on Boston at this point. But that does give me a little question about what Boston's doing with their lineups, because they're starting to play really young players who are making really bad judgments on fly balls right to them. If the Jays get in the playoffs, it might be because the Red Sox young outfield just misplayed a line drive hit right at them by Dalton Varsho. But that is what happened with youth. Hopefully that improves, but it's probably not something you could expect just yet. I lean to Boston getting plus 145. I guess I lean to over 8.5, but I don't really have a great feel on why the Texas. I mean, the ballpark, I think in Arlington, I've been to it. Well, what formerly was a ballpark in Arlington moved to Globe Life Park indoors. It's still very cold in there. I mean, it's like in the 90s here still, recording this live from Dallas, Texas. But ultimately, the weather or situation there, I still feel like it's an under park, or will be that at some point. So I don't know. It doesn't really help an overlean. Next, go to Baltimore visiting Houston. We got John Means in his second start after missing a long time from Tommy John. He's visiting Justin Verlander, also a Tommy John zipper recipient. You could probably say that about almost all these pitchers pitching today, I guess. But Verlander currently minus 180 favorite. Over is 8.5, juiced a little bit to the over. That's gigantic. It's climbed from the minus 150 that it opened. That's not always the most accurate opening number, but whatever. It's not something to go off of. For I guess some explanation would probably be that Baltimore just had the biggest series of the season with the Tampa Bay Rays, used a ton of their pitching, and probably don't have a lot at the in the bullpen today. That's a big problem going to Houston, who is one of the best teams in baseball. Lineup is really clicking. It's fighting for that AL West crown. A lot of things are very worrisome about John Means as well. Just that he's probably not going deep in this game, which then puts a lot more stress or pressure on that Baltimore bullpen, which has been worked a ton this weekend. Saturday should have been a pretty easy type of day, though, because they had such a big lead after getting to Tyler Glasnow pretty easily. That was a winner by the real _ G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon, by the way. But I feel like Means is at this price, and the Orioles at this price are very interesting. I need to do some heavy digging on what the bullpen situation is going to look like. Felix Bautista, who's hurt, I think that's going to make Baltimore's organization manager Brandon Hyde even more conservative with using Yonei Kano, especially I think because he pitched 2 innings, I want to say, on Sunday. There's big questions there, but that's certainly the way I lean to the Orioles side of things, getting that plus 165. Verlander is he's just not the same guy. I mean, won the Cy Young last year. It's one of my tips, by the way, preseason episode back when I did a pregame podcast for Major League Baseball. And that one felt good at 25-1, I think it was, but he hasn't been the same guy this year. Age is potentially showing. He's on a much better team, but still, I mean, lost to the Athletics last time out, I believe. So there's definitely a possibility for the Orioles to make it somewhere close to my card, or maybe even potentially on it. Next, we move to Seattle visiting Oakland. Big series for the Mariners to potentially get a stranglehold of the AL West. Currently, Brian Wu on the road at JP Sears. Wu minus 164 favorite. Over under is 7.5, juice slightly to the over. There's been some money coming in on over. Not a lot really has moved the line too much. Maybe a little bit of money on Oakland so far. But Wu is great. Really good fastball. Looks like he's throwing 2 different fastballs now. One with better swing and miss ability. He's always good at the top of the zone, and that usually induces a lot of fly balls, which is perfect for a park like Oakland. JP Sears is a similar type of style pitcher, but a lefty. And when he's not in Oakland is almost an auto fade, I feel. When he's in Oakland, he can certainly use that fly ball tendency to his advantage. I still don't think he's very good. And the Athletics are one of the worst teams in baseball. So I don't think that plus 150 is interesting to me. I guess I lean under 7.5, but it's pretty low total for what looks like what should be a pretty bad Oakland bullpen. Since that's where, if you're trying to win, you spend on bullpen, and Oakland clearly was not trying to win this year. Finish up with 3 interleague games and get a best bet and get out of here. Joe Ryan starting for the Minnesota Twins at Connor Phillips, I believe this is the C for that one in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's just run out of pitching. COVID has certainly not helped. I don't know how they all got that, but it's probably some visitor in a hotel on the road or something like that. And then they all maybe shared her or something. I probably shouldn't say that thing out loud. Anyway, who knows? Got no inside sources, just some theories. But anyway, Joe Ryan, great he's a great pitcher. Doesn't have a ton of the like 98-mile-an-hour fastball, but he knows how to pitch, and it's worked very well. Formerly of the Tampa Bay Rays system, and they know exactly how to make pitchers, I think. That's why their franchise is so talented, and why they're in the playoffs yet again this year. Clinched that yesterday. But Joe Ryan, a minus 140 favorite on the road. Over under is 9.5, juice to the over. Not a lot of movement either way. Probably could say that for a lot of these games. Ultimately in September, we got these lines are pretty well established. Power rankings are pretty uniform across the board, but still value potentially on a home underdog here. Minnesota's bullpen is not trustworthy. Their lineup has got a ton of swing and miss in it. I just don't know that I trust Phillips enough for Cincinnati, and they've the luster has kind of worn off of that team. Seeing Ellie De La Cruz sitting against lefties after basically everyone thinking he's going to be the number one player in the world or history. It's a pretty big crash, but is maybe expected for a young team that Cincinnati got really hot and won a ton of games in a row. But I think they are going to eventually run out of steam, maybe not even make the playoffs, but there's a big race there. So potential, pretty big price for Joe Ryan to give on the road. I got to say, if his fastball, changeup, splitter, or whatever we're calling it, doesn't work very well, he can get hit really hard, especially in a very small Great American Small Park, where fly balls turn into home runs, where will be pop-ups or very low expected batting averages at other parks. More I talk about it, the more I'm interested in Cincinnati. I just don't know that I can trust Phillips, unfortunately. The White Sox then visit Washington. We got Clevenger at Adon, and currently Clevenger is a slight favorite on the road, minus 117. Over under is 9, juice to the over. We've had some money that has moved the under down from 9.5 to 9. Clevenger has had really good stuff and shown a lot in the past, but has had a lot of injury problems in the last couple of seasons. That certainly impacted him and maybe has lowered his ceiling for the future in his career. I think Adon, he can get through a White Sox lineup who's really not good. Unfortunately, the Nationals have been playing really poorly and have been really struggling. I kind of like what they are, but they're a bad team ultimately. And I've kind of fallen a little bit for them. I like the way they play. When they don't have the big power hitters, they're great at putting the ball in play. That's important, especially against a really bad Chicago White Sox defense that really hasn't been good ever since Hawk Harrelson was around. Or stop broadcasting. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I think the White Sox is a road favorite. It's something I'm looking to be against because they're one of the worst teams in baseball at this point, but are not being priced that way. I don't know that Adon is where I want to step in, but I'll certainly be looking at Washington through the rest of this series. And last but not least, we have the Detroit Tigers visiting the Los Angeles Dodgers. Eduardo Rodriguez at Lance Lynn. Lynn with a big home run fly ball tendencies, which is a big problem for when the playoffs approach for the Dodgers. But they do have a bye into the second round, most likely. It might get the 1 seed. We won't know until the end. Trying to chase down the Braves, I think, right now. But currently Lynn a minus 175 favorite at home. Over under is 8. And it's juiced a little bit to the over. It's come down from 8.5, it looks, but there were some questions about who's starting this game. So I don't know if I should trust that opening line, though the side seems to be pretty close. Current number based on what the open is displaying here at wagertalk.com. Thank you to them for what seems like a pretty good odds flickering system, I got to say. And so I think Eduardo Rodriguez is, he can get through a lineup and is a really good pitcher, but also I really worry about a lefty going against the Dodger lineup. Freddie Freeman's like one of the few lefties that can hit everybody. The Detroit Tigers bullpen has some arms in it. Alex Lang's been good. Foley's been good in front of him as well. Bo Brisky's been all right. And then Tyler Holton is not striking out anybody, which is scary against the Dodgers, especially as a lefty, but has a really low whip, ERA, all that sort of stuff. I really kind of like this. I guess I was kind of falling in love with the Nationals a second ago, but I'm way more into the Tigers, and I kind of like their odds for potentially winning. I'm going to be looking at them as a potential division winner in the AL Central next year because it seems like that division is always up for grabs. And we might get a decent price on the Tigers, but we'll see what they do in the offseason with building up their bullpen, which seems like it's pretty young and they don't need to do much there. But plenty of things to do to get to a competitive level in their lineup. But ultimately with what we've seen from Torkelson with a ton of home run power, not a lot of average or getting on base, but ultimately when he hits them, they go far. Kerry Carpenter's been awesome. So I'm talking myself even more interested in the Tigers here and really fading Lance Lynn because he's got big home run issues. They've been a problem all season. I could see that rearing its ugly head here against Detroit and as a minus 175 favorite at home. That's gigantic. It certainly respect the Dodgers for how good they are. We also might get a decent run line here, plus 1.5 on the Tigers. Could go lose by a single run in LA and you get paid. That also seemed very interesting. If that's a reasonable juice, maybe that's more worth it, or a +1 if you split half your bet on the run line plus 1.5 and the money line. Might as well pull that up right now while I'm talking to you about it. But let's see. So looks like run line minus 136. That's probably bigger than I wanted, but there's a good chance that there's some Dodger money that comes in. People trying to win back their losses before they have to pay their book this weekend. Hopefully none of us are doing that, but you never know. So that'll probably do it for the game by game. Maybe a little bit rapid today, but I feel like that's better for everyone. You don't want to spend 30 minutes listening to me, and I tend to get myself in trouble the more I talk on the microphone. But let's see. I think it's time for an ultimate best bet. So or I guess I keep calling that just a best bet because I'm not taking a pick from all the different leagues, interleague, National League, American League. I guess I could do that, but I think there's a little bit more work that's involved there, and unfortunately, I think that's a harder thing to do than I'd like it to be. So I guess let's do it. This is the _G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. And this is Betting the Pitch, Major League Baseball edition for Monday, September 18th. For my best bet today, I'm going to go with the Boston Red Sox and Cutter Crawford. He's a plus 147 underdog right now at Bet Online, or 145, plus 145 underdog at Bet Online. And pretty much Jordan Montgomery's a great pitcher for the Rangers, but has a really tough bullpen situation behind him. They haven't been very good for a long time now. And ultimately, the Texas lineup has been struggling as well. The Red Sox coming off a really tough series in Toronto, but we're very competitive. I don't think it's impossible for them to go in. Cutter Crawford have a good outing against the Texas Rangers lineup that really hasn't been as strong ever since setting records for the first half of the season. Texas also has a lot of pressure trying to hang on to a playoff spot, and that AL West division they're still trying to hold on to, which they led for so long this year. I think it's going to be a tough one today. So take the Red Sox plus 145 in Arlington, Texas. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch. Thanks for tuning in. If you're on YouTube or Spotify, please leave 5-star review or like it or subscribe. That would all really help. Everyone's requiring major subscriber numbers now to do anything advertising wise. So it doesn't look like there's gonna be a lot of advertising in this podcast going forward unless I sell it myself. So come on in, and thanks for sticking around. Probably will do a Major League Baseball podcast on Friday, would probably be the next one as we prepare for the weekend, as we get closer to the playoffs. We'll do a Champions League episode, I think, tonight. And then, of course, get on with my buddy Andrew Schnicker and I for our football NFL podcast, which is coming out Tuesday night, tomorrow night. And we're going to make it as hopefully as good as this one, because we had 2 on our best bets, and I think we did some really good job of predicting line movement, and that's kind of what we're going to do on that show. Feedback, comments, concerns, questions, anything, please, the _G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Well, not Facebook, Patreon. This is a non-Facebook broadcast. Anyway, maybe I should start looking there. But thanks so much. I'm going to stop rambling. Talk to you all soon.